Imagine a horror movie where the main characters already knew exactly how they were going to die, and yet they still ended up falling for it every single time. That's tarot for you in a nutshell, but trust me, it's actually even more ridiculous than it sounds. I'm not lying when I say that these are some of the most mind-blowingly unintelligent characters ever to exist. But on the bright side, at least we get to watch them all die in hilarious and easily avoidable ways. We're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the demonic cards in tarot. This girl is about to have the worst birthday party of her entire life. At a mansion far out in the mountains of upstate New York, a group of college students are gathered around the campfire just kicking back and having a good old time. They rented the place for their friend Elise's birthday, and so far everyone seems like they're having fun. But things get awkward when Haley and Grant's relationship gets brought up. Everyone else seems to think that they're halfway to taking their wedding vows. But as Grant leaves to go get himself another drink, Haley admits to the others that they actually just broke up the day before. Both of them clearly have very different ideas about what went wrong. But while Grant and the friend group's designated comic relief character Paxton split off for their own bro therapy session, a much bigger problem suddenly presents itself. They're already down to the very last brewski. It's too late at night and they're too far from civilization to run to the store or try to get something delivered, so they decide to check the house for any more booze that the owners might have locked up. The search eventually leads them to a padlocked door, which the golden retriever of the group Lucas abruptly breaks open. And inside they find an old wooden staircase leading down to a creepy basement that's full of strange and vaguely threatening artifacts. As they explore the basement, Elise finds an old blanket that Haley recognizes as a divination cloth, and she realizes that many of the items are all things that you'd use in astrology. That's when Paxton discovers a small wooden box with a zodiac wheel carved into its lid, and a stack of creepy hand-painted tarot cards that's stashed inside. It turns out that Haley here is actually something of an astrologer herself, and although she doesn't think that it's a good idea, Elise finally convinces her to give everyone their horoscope readings by playing the birthday card. But that was their biggest mistake. Okay, and there we have it, folks. I might not be a fortune teller, but I don't need a crystal ball to see into their futures. Forget the birthday party. These kids might as well be planning their own funerals, because all of this evidence makes it seem like they've got about 30 seconds before they either end up summoning an ancient Mesopotamian demon or turning into a possessed zombie and tearing each other's heads off. You know what I mean? They probably thought that they were nice and safe since this is a mansion and not a cabin. But the truth is that if it's in the woods and it has a basement loaded with creepy artifacts, then it might as well be a slaughterhouse. Ever since The Evil Dead, you get a group of college kids together out boozing it up in the woods, and you can pretty much bet your bank account that they're gonna be in for some serious trouble. In fact, statistics show that over 87 of all college kid camping trips end up opening a gate to the underworld within the first night. What's my source for that? I made it up, but maybe next time it would be safer to book a trip to Cabo, or you know what, just do the rest of us a favor and stay the f home instead. It doesn't help that they're out committing every slasher movie sin imaginable either. Let's see, we got adult beverages, a campfire, someone's birthday party, and worst of all, relationship troubles. Wah, wah, wah. That's like putting up the bat signal for guys with masks and machetes. Jason Voorhees was already in an Uber on his way over there the moment that they clicked book on this Airbnb. And if that wasn't bad enough, now they can all thank Lucas here for breaking into the clearly labeled Necronomicon basement, as if the big keep out sign on the door was just a casual suggestion. The instant that they saw what was down there, they should have quietly packed their things, shut the door, and left the property without touching another object. But what did they do instead? Well, they picked up the mysterious box with an inverted pentagram carved into the lid and said, "Oh yeah, now it's a party." I mean, does this take place in an alternate universe where horror movies just don't exist? At this rate, Russell Crowe is going to have to hop on his little scooter and drive all the way to America just to save their asses. Even for just laying eyes on something like that, you should probably make an immediate trip to the nearest church. But these kids said, "I know what'll be fun. Let's use these cards, hand-painted by the Zodiac Killer himself, to read each other's fortunes." I swear they get dumber every day, man. It's starting to affect me mentally. Ugh. Haley here seems to be the only one who knows what's going on, and she mentioned that combining tarot and horoscopes is the most powerful form of forecasting. But is there really any truth to that? Well, the simple answer is nah. Not really. Tarot cards originally started out as just regular cards meant for playing games, but eventually began to be used for fortune telling sometime around the late 1700s, with the oldest surviving deck dating back to around the year 1450. As for horoscopes, they go all the way back, all the way back to like ancient Mesopotamia or sometime around 2000 BC. Unlike tarot, cultures like ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans all used horoscope astrology to guide their daily lives, and even as a way to make predictions about the outcomes of major battles and political events. In modern times, combining horoscopes and tarot can be an interesting way to make predictions, using astrology to give you a broader overview and the cards to give you more specific insights into a particular situation. But how you choose to believe in them is ultimately up to you. Now, whether you're dealing with horoscopes, tarot, or just your average everyday seance, the most dangerous part is that you don't always have control over what spirits you invite in, especially when you're dealing with somebody who's self-taught like Haley here. To be on the safe side, it's much better to leave this kind of stuff to the trained professionals, which is something that Haley and her friends here are about to learn the hard way. Back upstairs, the group turns down the lights and lights a few candles while Haley sets things up. Even though the rest of them are still treating it like a harmless joke, Haley here starts to have second thoughts, saying that it's bad luck to make predictions with somebody else's deck. But the birthday girl insists that she ain't afraid of no ghosts, and sits down for her first reading as her friend breaks out the cards. Process works like this. Haley places 12 cards around the outside of the circle to go along with each sign of the zodiac, with the most important 13th card placed in the center to determine the reading's overall theme. Elise, a Libra, gets the inverted High Priestess, which means that she's climbing the ladder of success, but needs to be careful not to slip up and suffer a crushing blow. Next up is Maddie, a Pisces, who pulls the Hanged Man, which Haley says is a warning not to run from her problems. Paige, the Virgo, must be getting ready to play some dual monsters because she draws the Dark Magician, but Haley says that she needs to watch out for his tricks that could stop her from seeing clearly. Meanwhile, Paxton here goes off on his own to use the bathroom when he notices the door to the back patio mysteriously slamming open and closed in the wind. He sees what looks like a terrifying figure with glowing yellow eyes staring back at him from the darkness, but the motion-activated lights reveal that it was only a harmless pile of garbage. Or was it? Back with the others, everyone starts saying that it's his turn to go next, so Paxton sits down with Haley to get his reading. He's a Taurus, making him reliable, but also stubborn, and for his card, he gets the reversed Fool, a warning not to act on his impulses. Lucas, a Capricorn, pulls the Hermit. It's mostly good news for him, with Haley predicting that he's going to come into some money and get a chance with his crush, Maddie. But she also warns him to be careful where he's heading, otherwise he might get led down the wrong track. She's getting ready to put the cards away when Grant sits down and asks for his reading next. But compared to Lucas, his situation is not looking good. According to Haley, it says that he's ruining his relationships with others because he's arrogant. And for his 13th card, he gets the Devil, telling him that he needs to face his demons. Even though she was against it before, Grant's reading has Haley curious enough that she finally decides to do one for herself. Her 13th card ends up being Death, but she says that she isn't surprised. Her cards have always told her that love would be the death of her someday. Eventually, everyone heads to bed for the last night of their stay, but down in the basement, the carvings on the box start to glow a fiery orange as the card's demonic curse is unleashed. The next morning, the group splits up into 2 cars for the long drive back to campus, with Paxton forcing his crew to listen to true crime podcasts the entire way home. By the time that they stop for some gas, they're all so hooked by the story that Lucas ends up jump scaring them when he comes back with a winning scratch-off ticket for $700. That's the first prediction coming true, and none of them realize it yet, but it won't be much longer before Haley's readings are going to turn deadly. It isn't until after dark that they finally make it home, and the girls drop Elise off at her apartment for some much-needed rest. Her roommates are all out at a frat party, so she decides to stay in and take a nice relaxing bath instead. But when she goes to dry off, she notices that someone opened the ladder to the attic. Confused, she yells up to check if anyone's up there before closing the hatch and heading back to her room, not thinking much of it until a few minutes later, when she hears a loud crash from somewhere out in the hallway. Thinking that it could be the other girls, Elise gets up to investigate, but quickly realizes that somehow the attic is open again. She flips on the light switch without ever noticing that there's something watching her from the shadows. And this time, she can faintly hear what sounds like her friends laughing and running around upstairs. It's enough to convince her that it must be a prank, but when she climbs up to the top of the ladder to see for herself, she's surprised to find that there's nothing up there besides cobwebs and boxes of old shit. That's when the lights in the hallway suddenly flicker and go out. And when she looks back up, she sees that the attic has been filled with candles and the High Priestess card from her reading. All of a sudden, the demonic priestess from the card appears and shrieks in Elise's face, scaring her so badly that she falls off the ladder and badly breaks both of her legs. It's not enough to kill her, but as she crawls for her phone, the priestess drags her back and begins slamming the ladder down onto her head from up above, crushing her over and over again until the girl is finally dead. That makes one down, with 6 more to go. Okay, man, talk about the worst birthday ever. It looks like the priestess here just put the horror in horoscope. And now we've got our first member of the friend group down, but she might have survived if they just paid more attention to all of the strange things that have been happening since they made the mistake of messing with those cards. I think that Haley here is the most to blame out of everyone because she knew that it was bad luck to use somebody else's deck, but still let her friends peer pressure her into doing it. A safer solution would have been to make a fun game out of drawing their own deck on some cardboard or something, and then using those cards instead. But now they all have to suffer the consequences for messing with something that they didn't fully understand. Now, if you've been paying attention, then you probably already noticed that Elise's death here actually matched up word for word with Haley's first prediction. She felt the urge to investigate and make sense of things once she heard those strange noises. Let her curiosity lead her into the unknown and even climbed the ladder to success, but ended up suffering a crushing blow, just like Haley tried to warn her about. This means that if she'd just done the opposite of what her reading said and not checked the noises out at all, then she might have been able to avoid falling into the priestess's trap. It's not like she didn't have plenty of chances to do something differently. I mean, just think about it for a minute. She didn't hear anyone come home before the loud crash, and what kind of birthday prank would her friends be pulling by hiding up in this creepy-ass attic? If it were me, the moment that I saw that there was no one really up there, I would have been full-on sprinting to the front door like I was trying to qualify for the Olympics. There's a few rules that I like to live by, and one of them is that if you catch yourself nervously asking, "Is somebody there?" then that's a good sign that you should probably be long gone already. Even after her legs were broken, there was nothing stopping Elise from just rolling to either side so that her head wouldn't get squished. But hopefully, whoever is up next has some better survival skills. As for the others, they all saw Lucas win the money. And now that Elise was just killed by a ladder of all things, they shouldn't need any more proof to start realizing that Haley's predictions are coming true. They should obviously start paying attention to their tarot readings, and whoever comes up next just needs to remember what their prediction was. That way, they can look for any loopholes or hints that might help them survive. Since the demon went for Elise first, it might be going in the order that they were read, so this means that Maddie could be next. When it comes to her prediction, Haley mentioned water under the bridge and not running away from her problems. If she wants to survive, then all that she needs to do is stay the away from any bridges. And when the demon shows up, just stand still. Should be easy enough, right? But I'm sure that they'll find some way to screw that up. The next day, after finding out the news, everyone comes over to Paige's apartment, and they're all completely heartbroken over the loss of their friend. When it's eventually time for them to go, Haley decides to spend the night there to help Paige feel better, and Grant says that she can call him if there's anything that the two of them need. Lucas ends up walking Maddie back to her place, and it's looking like he might actually get that chance with her after all, but they leave it off with a hug just for now, having no idea that they'll never see each other alive again. He walks off feeling like this might be the best day of his life, but the Hermit is already watching his every move, just waiting for the right moment to finally strike. A little while later, Paige suddenly jolts awake in bed after having another nightmare about Elise. She's been partly blaming herself for what happened, convinced that she might have been able to change things if she had been there. But Haley says that she disagrees. She decides that now would be the perfect time to launch into a long-winded story about how she got into astrology. Basically, Haley's mom came down with a bad sickness a few years back, and she started reading tarot as a way to cope with the sadness of losing her. The cards always told her that her mother wouldn't make it, and sure enough, she ended up passing away just like Haley predicted, leaving her convinced that there's nothing that anyone can do to change their fate. Meanwhile, Lucas heads over to catch a ride home on the subway, but finds the entire station completely abandoned. As he's walking through the tunnels, all of the lights begin to flicker on and off, inspiring him to pick up the pace a little bit. But as he turns the next corner, he sees something that makes him stop dead in his tracks. Waiting for him in the darkness just a bit up ahead is a menacing cloaked figure. The darkness begins to flood down the hallway towards him like an empty void trying to swallow him whole. Terrified, Lucas takes off running back the way he came in, but the darkness is quickly closing in all around him, leaving him with nowhere to run besides through a doorway leading into a restricted area. Inside, he finds himself in an old train yard full of abandoned subway cars. It seems like he might have lost the creep at first, but as he's walking along the tracks, he steps on a newspaper with a big picture of his face printed under the headline, "You Die Today." All of a sudden, the Hermit lunges at him from the shadows, scaring him into taking cover on one of the nearby trains. It's not enough though, because the creature follows him on, rushing at him down the aisle before disappearing again just to mess with him. The Hermit pounces on him one last time and shocks Lucas so badly that he tumbles out through another doorway directly into the path of an oncoming train. That makes 2 down, with 5 more to go. Okay. Damn, boy! Most people only get a light at the end of the tunnel, but I guess Lucas here got the whole ass train. It looks like the Hermit just booked this guy a one-way ticket to the pain station. And I'm no mind reader, but I'd be willing to bet that his last thoughts before it was all over went something like, damn, we really shouldn't have with those cards. It might be too late for Lucas, but there still are some important lessons that we can learn here that just might save the others' lives, if they can put together the pieces before the next attack. First, we know now that the spirit is definitely not going in the order that they got their readings, which means that anyone could be up next. Keeping this in mind, I'd say that from now on, everyone needs to stick together as a group, because so far, it only went after Elise and Lucas when they were completely alone. Almost like being near other people stops it from being able to get to you. Plus, it's always a good idea to have some meat shields around just in case. And that goes for whatever kind of supernatural crap that you're up against. Another important thing to notice is that the priestess and Hermit never actually made physical contact with either victim, but instead used jump scares and other objects in the environment to take them out. This could mean that the creatures don't actually exist in the physical world and need essentially to hypnotize their victims in order for their powers to work. It's a neat trick, but it can also be countered easily enough by just remembering not to trust what you're seeing and staying focused on objective reality. During both attacks, the spirits also led their victim into a separate area where they had control over, where their powers had the greatest effect. Having other people around would help to stop this from happening, and whenever the next spirit shows up, they should remember to avoid getting into enclosed spaces like that. Instead, I'd try to stay in public areas or outdoors where I had plenty of options for how to run away, and could literally see the creature coming long before it was able to pop out and scare me. All this means that if Lucas had just stayed still instead of running away into the restricted area, then the creature probably couldn't have hurt him after all. Then all that he would have needed to do is just take out his phone light and find his way back out to the station. With 2 members of the squad down, the rest of them should definitely be catching on by now that their lives are also in danger. They need to stick together and obviously avoid doing anything that was mentioned in their readings. It also might be a good idea to see another psychic for another reading, or just do another reading themselves without the demonic cards, of course. It's a long shot, but getting a new fortune told could cancel out the predictions that are killing them, or at least give them a few ideas for what else they can do about it. It isn't going to be easy, but on the bright side, as far as demonic curses go, this one really isn't that bad. Let's just see if they're able to figure things out before another one bites the dust. Haley and Grant are back on campus having another talk about their feelings again, when they get the shocking news about their boy Lucas. At this point, the friend group is dropping like flies, and they still have absolutely no clue what could possibly be doing it. They have a meeting with a team of painfully incompetent detectives, but when they say that they can't help them, the friends decide that it's time to take matters into their own hands. Back at the apartment, they're spitballing different ideas when Haley here finally has a Jimmy Neutron brain blast and realizes that it's their horoscope readings coming true. As crazy as it sounds, it's the only logical explanation, but if they can't go to the police or even their parents for help, then they're going to have to figure this one out on their own. Grabbing Paxton's laptop, they do a quick Google search that leads them back to a bunch of articles all written by the same person, Alma Astorm. It seems like she experienced something just like this several years back, so they decide to hit her up and see if she can give them any advice. Unfortunately, the woman's phone number is out of service, but she has her home address posted on her website for the whole world to see. So Haley decides to do the only logical thing here and immediately make the several-hour drive out to this strange old lady's house. It's already late at night by the time that they get there, and the place doesn't exactly look the most inviting, but Haley leads the way and starts pounding on the door until the woman finally answers. Without Haley even needing to explain, the old lady already knows exactly what deck of tarot cards that she's talking about. It turns out that this particular deck has been making its way around the world for centuries, killing off groups of amateur astrologers whenever it was used, including Alma's own friends on a weekend trip back in the 80s. The only reason that she survived was because she didn't do a reading for herself, and she's been trying to track down and destroy the deck ever since. As for why this deck is so evil, that goes back to the story of a Hungarian woman known only as the Astrologer. In the late 1700s, she worked as a fortune teller for a powerful count, but became unhappy with her predictions when she read that he would lose both his wife and unborn child. The woman and her own child were exiled into the wilderness, but when her predictions came true all the same, the count sent his men out to find them, and they took her daughter as an act of revenge. Heartbroken, the woman used her own blood to bind her soul to the deck of tarot cards, placing a death curse on the count and anyone else who uses the cards to read their horoscopes. According to the old lady, the only way to stop the curse is to destroy the deck once and for all, but they're going to have to survive the trip back home first. At some point during the drive, the friends are all busy discussing what they should do next, and Maddie here suggests that they could try doing the opposite of whatever their readings said as a way of beating the curse at its own game. She's checking a video of her own reading for any ideas when, completely out of nowhere, the car stalls out and comes to a stop in the middle of an empty bridge. Everyone starts freaking out as they realize that it must be another tarot attack, but they're doing fine until the spirit draws a game of hangman on Maddie's window, and she inexplicably decides to take off running at a dead sprint into the darkness all on her own. Haley quickly chases after her, but before the others can follow, the demonic creature starts circling around the car and slamming its head into the windows, terrifying them before disappearing up into the beams of a bridge. Before Haley can catch her, the creature uses its rope to catch Maddie by her neck, pulling it tight and dragging her high up into the air, while her friends can only watch. It drops her back down again after a moment just to mess with them, but then finally pulls her back up and starts to devour her body, while the others run for their lives. That makes 3 down, with 4 more to go. Okay, well everyone, that's it. I think we can officially say that we've just witnessed the most easily avoidable death in the history of horror movies. I gotta say, I'm almost at a loss for words with how unbelievably stupid these kids here are. But I actually know a few that fit the situation perfectly. Hey Maddie, you f***ed up. First of all, is it not absolutely insane that it took them this long to finally come to this conclusion? I mean, seriously, people, how many more impossible coincidences do you need to happen before you connect the dots? It really took hearing from a crazy old lady to get it through your thick heads that all of this started happening immediately after you messed with the damn demon cards. The kids at home watching Blue's Clues and Dora the Explorer could have figured that out by now. Wake up, people! You even had the old backstory lady here tell you exactly what you needed to do to break the curse. And yet, you still managed to screw it all up. Seriously, what's the point of going out of your way to get her advice if you're not actually going to do anything with that information? Especially after she tells you that if you don't act fast, then all of you are going to die. You all should have gone straight back to the mansion and burned that deck of cards right then and there. But then that would have involved you actually making an intelligent decision, and we just can't have that now, can we? And then we have our girl Maddie here. Oh yeah, don't think that I forgot about you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it literally your idea to reverse engineer the predictions? Literally less than 2 minutes ago, you said, and I quote, "If we figure out what's gonna happen, we can stop it." So why then, Maddie? Why, when the danger showed up, was your first instinct to run down the bridge straight to your death? Is it because you like watching me suffer? Your exact instructions were to not panic and fight the urge to run. Why are you running? You even had the benefit of knowing what else was going on, unlike Elise and Lucas, so getting killed is pretty much the equivalent of slapping both of them in the face. Honestly though, I'm not really surprised that you got killed. As a matter of fact, with survival skills like that, I'm actually more surprised that you even managed to make it this far. This one's going to be in the How to Beat Hall of Shame, faux show. And if there's one thing that I think that everyone on this planet can agree on, it's that Maddie, you f***ed up. God! After running on foot all the way back into town, the survivors here finally come to a stop somewhere in the park, and immediately start arguing again over what to do next. Haley points out that the attack on the bridge looked like Maddie's prediction coming true, which, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. We established that like 20 minutes ago. The rest of them only see one chance for breaking the curse. Get back to the house in the Catskills and burn the damn deck of cards, but Paxton here decides that now it's his turn to be an absolute moron. Completely ignoring any warnings from his friends, he storms off to wait it out in his room instead, leaving the others to try their plan out without him, if that's what they want to do. Sure enough, he makes it about 15 feet before he starts hearing disembodied laughter from somewhere in the darkness, but soldiers on, determined to just ignore his way through the whole situation. It gets a little bit more difficult to ignore though when he sees a reflection of the fool stalking him from across the street, and turns around to watch as the freak spins its entire upper body in a circle, like its spinal column is made out of a slinky. To make matters even worse, his key to the staircase isn't working, forcing him to use the elevator instead. But that's exactly where the fool wants him. As he reaches the top floor, he sees the demon already waiting for him at the end of the hallway, and when he goes to hit the button for a lower floor, the whole elevator suddenly becomes possessed, trapping him inside. All that he can do is go along for the ride as the doors open over and over again, revealing another terrifying trick from the fool every time. Once he's had his fun, it's time for the grand finale, and the lights turn red as the fool suddenly explodes through the ceiling, leaping down onto Paxton and tearing him apart with a smiling mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. That makes 4 down with 3 more to go. Okay, I'm just gonna be honest with you folks, I am absolutely done with these morons. F***ing roll credits already. I'm officially on Team Demon Cards at this point, and they can all get smoked for all I care. Like, what the f*** going on, man? Paxton here just made the same mistakes as Maddie and everyone else. He completely ignored the warning signs and made the unfathomably dumb decision to split up from the rest of the group, even though he just demonstrated in the clearest way possible that the only safe move was to do the exact opposite of what the predictions said. Whew, I'm heated. As soon as he started hearing he should have immediately ran back to the rest of his friends, especially after he saw the spirit watching him in the reflection. But instead, he ran to the elevator and got himself boxed in, just like it said in the prediction. He might have been able to escape by taking the elevator to a different floor than the one that he actually lives on, since hopefully this would trick the demon by doing something unexpected that essentially changes his destiny. Otherwise, he could have tried climbing out through the maintenance hatch in the ceiling or calling emergency services with the elevator's built-in phone. Once he realized that he was cornered, he could have also tried something that no one else has done yet and just tackled the damn thing. It would be a risky play for sure, but it just might work for all that we know. As for the others, I'm glad that they've finally decided to make one smart decision and go back to the house in the Catskills and get rid of the deck. Obviously, the spirit isn't going to let them do it without a fight, so it couldn't hurt to be prepared. I'd stock up on all the classic demon fighting gear before we head out, like some protective objects, a big-ass container of salt, maybe some sage, and of course a chainsaw if I could get my hands on one. Because going into a demon fight without a chainsaw is like walking into the ring against Mike Tyson with both of your hands tied behind your back. If they do this right, then the three of them might just have a chance at surviving this, but after seeing their survival skills so far, I honestly can't say that I'm expecting really all that much. The others are already on their way back to the mansion when they realize that something bad must have happened to Paxton. Either way, there's nothing that they can do about it now, so they keep driving until they finally arrive back at the place where it all began. Finding the cards is no problem. They're right where they left them in a cabinet down in the basement, but deciding what to do next is a bit more complicated. Given their lack of supplies and proper training, they decide to just keep it simple for now and throw the whole damn deck into the fireplace. But in a shocking twist of events that absolutely nobody could have seen coming, the cards refuse to burn. They end up needing to call the old lady, who somehow manages to get there even though she doesn't have a car or a phone. After filling her in on the situation, they carve a zodiac wheel into the wooden floorboards and light up some candles for a bit of ambiance as she prepares to banish the vengeful spirit from the deck. Closing her eyes, she calls on the spirit of the astrologer to come forward, and a sudden look of fear passes over her face as she senses the demon's presence in the room. The spirit quickly proves too powerful for her to control, taking over the woman's body and forcing her to read her own horoscope, where she pulls the Six of Swords as her 13th card. Suddenly, she's violently pulled back into the darkness, and the others run for their lives out in the hallway, only to almost crash right into her sword-riddled body as it drops down directly into their path. That makes 5 down, with 3 more to go. In the confusion, Paige accidentally splits off from the rest of the group, finding herself lost somewhere in the house, just in time for her own tarot reading to attack. Grant notices this and tries to go back for her, but they're cut off by a massive demon as it creeps around the corner behind them, forcing them to keep running for their own survival. They're able to make it into a bedroom and block the doorway using some furniture for now, but as for their friend, she won't be getting away so easily. Paige starts following the sound of Haley's voice down to the basement steps, never realizing that it's just another one of the spirit's tricks, until the door suddenly slams shut behind her, trapping her inside. As she looks around, the voices continue to grow louder and louder until a sudden surge of electricity shatters the light bulb directly above her, blinding the girl with the broken glass. Unable to see straight, she stumbles around the basement in pain until she accidentally wanders through a curtain and onto a bizarre theater stage, where the magician is already waiting to put on her final performance. With a crowd of zombified onlookers clapping away, he teleports a pair of shackles onto Paige's legs. But she's able to crawl backstage and hide out in this helpfully placed box. The only problem is that she ends up locked inside and can only watch through the keyhole as the magician slowly rolls her back out onto the stage. Pulling a huge saw from his coat, he begins stabbing it through the different sides of the box, forcing her to scramble from one side to the other to avoid getting hit. After having his fun, the magician uses a crank to shrink the box down so that there's nowhere left for Paige to go, and proceeds to saw her body in half at the stomach as she screams out in pain. That makes 6 down with just 2 more to go. Okay, and then there were 2. Is it bad that I'm still rooting for the demon cards to win here? I didn't think so. With the old lady down and their meat shield numbers steadily dwindling, things really aren't looking all that great for Haley and Grant. But there's still a small chance that they might pull this off if they just remember their readings, since that was always the answer all along. Let's start with Haley. She knows that love is going to be the death of her, so if she's planning on living instead, then turning against Grant is going to be her only option. The best thing would be to use him as a meat shield while she runs for her life or focuses on destroying the cards. But whatever happens, she better not try to save him if she sees that he's in danger. Otherwise, she might be reunited with Paige and the others sooner than she thought. As for Grant, he's actually the only person in the group who needs to listen to his reading. His was just regular advice, not a warning, and it said that he needs to face his demons. So it looks like he's gonna have to fight. Personally, I would have grabbed one of those swords out of the dead old lady. Maybe he and Haley could enchant the swords with the power of friendship or some shit like that, since that almost always works whenever it's an option. And use them to destroy the witch and her cards once and for all. Hi-ya! We know that the last card of any reading comes to life, so maybe Haley could give both of them a new prediction and let the creatures fight, like summoning the Knight of Swords and letting him battle with the devil while they figure out another solution. They could also try other ideas like going back to the old woman's plan of somehow separating the witch's spirit from the cards. This would probably involve some kind of spell, exorcism, or purification ritual type deal. But honestly, do you really think that these two can actually figure something like that out? My guess is no, which means that their only choice is to use what they've learned so far and hope for the best. Yeah. While their friend is suffering a horrific death, Haley and Grant here are busy doing, you guessed it, absolutely nothing besides just sitting around and talking about their feelings. According to Haley, the stars have always told her that they would never work out as a couple, but thinking about astrology suddenly gives her an idea for one last desperate plan. She wants to use the cards to try reading the astrologer's own horoscope, and hopefully turn the entire curse right back around on her instead. Grant has his doubts about if it's actually going to work or not, but since he can't come up with a better plan, he decides to put his trust in the heart of the cards. And not a moment too soon, because just then the demonic creature suddenly appears behind them and drags him out through the broken window, with the monster coming after her next. Haley runs for the door as it enters the room behind her and transforms from the devil into her 13th card, the figure of death itself. She makes it into the hallway just in time, running for her life as the demon closes in, and decides to make the most idiotic choice yet by hiding from it in the damn closet. Somehow, this actually fucking works, but as soon as she creeps back out into the hallway, her old buddy Death shows up again to crash the party. This time, Haley escapes back down to the first floor, but the spirit cuts her off no matter which direction that she goes, before finally catching the girl and holding her up against the wall as it prepares to deal the fatal blow. It looks like that's it for Haley, but just then, Grant comes running in and blasts the freak with a fire poker, saving her life just in time. He tells her to run for the tarot cards while he holds the spirit off, but it quickly overpowers him and starts dragging him down into the depths of hell. At the same time, Haley is able to finally start reading the witch's horoscope, telling her that the only way for her soul to heal is to let go of the past. Well, the witch here isn't exactly in the mood for a counseling session, but when she looks down at her cards, she realizes that her last prediction is the same as Haley's: death. All of a sudden, a supernatural wind blows through the room as the zodiac wheel on the floor erupts in a fiery tornado. The witch tries to hold on, but the force of the energy drags her back into the whirlwind, and she disintegrates before their very eyes, torn into 1,000 pieces by her own demonic curse. With the spirit finally defeated, Haley and Grant start walking on foot back towards the nearest town, when all of a sudden they see a pair of headlights approaching them from down the dark road. For a moment, they're both terrified, thinking that the demon is still coming for them after all, but it turns out that it's just Paxton, having somehow survived his fate when his roommate randomly came along and interrupted the fool's attack at the last second. In the end, the last 3 survivors were able to beat out their own destinies, but it cost the lives of the rest of their friend group. And if there's one lesson we can learn here, it's that if you find an old basement full of creepy artifacts, just do everyone else a favor and leave that shit alone. Boom, Tarot 2024. Holy fucking shit. Cool movie, but man, those characters. Sheesh. You already know what the fuck I'm thinking. How to beat Hall of Fame, how to beat Hall of Shame. Woo, brain fried. But let us know down in the comments what you guys would have done differently. Thank you, as always, for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.